Thank you, Brian, and thank you, J.P. Morgan Chase, for your support. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon, but before I do a little brief introduction. We're going to do a different kind of introduction. So, ready to go?
One weekend a year, nearly 1,000 military veterans assemble in a camp in San Diego. What brings them is what they have in common. They're all homeless. The vets gather for something called Stand Down, started in 1988 by a soldier-turned-psychologist named John Nachison. Then it was an emergency response to homelessness among Vietnam vets. But 23 years later, Nachison is welcoming the generation from Iraq and Afghanistan. Stand Down is a 3-day campout that's part jobs fair, part health clinic, part sobriety meeting. The name is a military term for the time when a soldier can put down his weapon and stop fighting. The homeless go for a shot at redemption. We went to understand why so many people who serve their country find coming home so hard.
Hey, good morning, you guys. How you guys doing? We're gonna have a great stand down this year.
It's a Friday morning in July. John Nachison is greeting his troops.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Hey. Homeless vets and their families who'd waited all night to get in.
We are going to open the gates. Let's do it. All right.
They were literally a battalion, 947 men, women, and children.
Good morning, sir. Welcome to Stand Down. We'd like to give you a breakfast bag and something to drink.
All right. When people come in, they're instantly transported back to the military, a time where they wore the uniform, where they were proud, where they were walking tall.
You want them to remember a time in life when they were proud of themselves.
I want to evoke that person in them.
Nachison does that by putting them inside a military-style base on a San Diego high school athletic field. 30 tents, erected by Marines from nearby Camp Pendleton. Here, there was hot chow, warm showers, clean clothes, and fresh hope. So who can you save?
People can save themselves. I can't save anybody.
You don't expect a miracle to happen when they come here for 3 days.
Oh, I do.
You do?
I do.
You ready, sir?
Yes.
Have you step forward?
The chance at that miracle came with over 3,000 volunteers who helped the vets check into VA benefits and look into jobs.
How are you doing today, Mr. Lamont?
There was medical care, dental care.
Please remain seated and come to order. Court is in session.
And even a court where they could clear tickets for loitering or sleeping on the street.
The matters that are currently pending are dismissed with people's motion. You're welcome.
Why are these people on the street?
It must be some gap that exists between military service and becoming a civilian. You're told what to wear, you know, you're given everything, and then suddenly you've lost your entire family, you've lost your identity.
You think some people fall through that gap between military life and civilian life?
And for some people, it's a chasm.
All right, Mr. Worley.
It was a chasm for Charles Worley, who served with the Marines in Iraq. He's still in the reserves, subject to being recalled. We mistook him for a volunteer until we heard this.
How long have you been homeless?
A few months, about 6.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Okay.
Worley left the Marines in 2008 and joined the Great Recession.
Okay, let's go.
Like everyone at Stand Down, he had his service record verified by the VA. Then he was assigned to one of the tents that go by the names Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and so on. Delta Tent was Worley's first home in a long time. Where did you sleep the night before you came here?
In Old Town Park down in San Diego.
He hadn't imagined that leaving a war could be risky.
I got used to the structure and was having a hard time adapting to civilian life, because if you change commands or you move from job to job in the Marine Corps, they give you a checklist.
Life gets pretty simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's, you know, they say turn right, you turn right as fast as you can without bumping the guy next to you. I didn't have a checklist when I got out.
Without a checklist, Worley burned through the combat pay he'd saved before he looked for a job. Turns out, unemployment among these young returning veterans is double the national rate, about 20%. The VA tells us that already there are more than 9,000 Iraq and Afghanistan vets living on the street. Charles, what's it like out there, living as a homeless man?
As sad as it is to say, I've gotten good at being homeless. When you have 2 pairs of jeans, a pair of shorts, and 3 shirts, and you don't have any money to wash them, after a while that you start to smell, and you know you smell, and so I just try to avoid people.
So you keep moving.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's a familiar story for John Nachison, who, as a clinical psychologist, has been working with vets for almost 30 years. It's a new generation of homeless veterans.
It is. This group is becoming homeless quicker than the Vietnam veteran. Vietnam vets came back. It took about 8 to 10 years before we started really seeing them on the street, homeless. This group is coming back, and within a year, they're ending up on the street. And my best hunch is that for many of them, it's these redeployments again and again.
Over the last 9 years, 800,000 troops have been redeployed, sent back to combat at least once. Getting redeployed 2, 3, 4, even 5 times, why does that make a difference?
When you go back and you're re-traumatized, it also brings up all the old stuff. Go back again, and it layers over the top of that. And so now we're getting to the point where it's going to be difficult for the person to function.
2 million troops have already served in Iraq and Afghanistan. The VA believes there could be thousands more homeless, in part because of the combat stress and brain injuries that roadside bombs inflict. Already, 250,000 troops have asked for mental health treatment. The troops that are going to come back from Afghanistan and from Iraq, is this country prepared for that?
I don't think so.
I mean, this stand down alone.
Oh, yeah. Saturday morning, we met Marguerite Summers and learned about something else that's new. There are more women among homeless vets because women now make up 14% of our forces. Summers is a former sailor who served until 1999, and she too had trouble making that transition from military to civilian life. Shortly after getting out of the Navy, she got divorced and began drinking. Now, homeless 3 months, she is desperate for help with her alcoholism and meth abuse.
I have more potential than that, and I don't want to waste my life anymore. I'm tired of it, and this has given me new hope.
You said that you'd lost everything and your family.
I lost my son a year ago because of my abuse issues. I owned a home, I lost that. I lost my family's support, I lost my job, wound up with a bunch of legal issues. You know, I was facing prison time. Just nothing good came out of it.
Addiction is a big reason some vets remain on the street for years.
My name is Woody, and I'm an alcoholic and a combat veteran.
My name's Eddie.
It's part of the deal at Stand Down that they come to the meetings that might be the first step to recovery. The best shot at rehab attracted Marguerite Summers to this tent. It was a chance to go to Veterans Village of San Diego, which sponsors Stand Down. Veterans Village is an $8 million a year program, much of it funded by the VA. It offers nearly a year of inpatient rehab, but it's overwhelmed. Funding is limited, and they were taking applications to choose only 68 patients out of the 947 at Stand Down.
Do you want to get clean?
Yes, ma'am.
You do? Okay.
They were looking for people who seemed motivated. Summers wouldn't find out whether she made the cut until the next day, Sunday. As we walked around the camp, we found some of the reasons that homelessness among vets is a chronic problem, with 250,000 on the streets last year. A lot of it is addiction and debilitating illness.
Thank you very much.
Bill Yarling was more typical of those at Stand Down. Older, an Army medic in the 1980s, he'd been disabled by years of epileptic seizures. Here, Yarling knew what no one else could see, that the soldier inside hadn't surrendered. He washed off a year of homelessness and, if nothing else, enjoyed a ceasefire from the struggle on the street.
It's hard to explain, it really is, but it just makes you feel better about yourself.
You get back in touch
Get back in touch with
person
reality.
you were
Yeah,
before you were
exactly.
homeless.
And as you can tell, I did, you know. It's not easy living on the streets, okay.
Yarling came looking for housing, but he found what Charles Worley discovered. Sometimes the programs don't match the need.
No, I have a bed problem. I need somewhere to sleep. And if I'm telling them I have an alcohol problem gets me a place to sleep, I'll sit through the AA meetings and the classes so I can go to sleep at night and not have to worry about anything.
Worley and Yarling couldn't get into available housing because they don't need rehab. There are other programs that provide housing for thousands of vets, but they cover about 20% of the homeless.
So we just wasted our time, didn't we? Texted every day, you know.
Stand Down can't track 1,000 homeless vets, so there's really no way to know how many might have picked up a lead on a job or a home, or how many decided finally to stick to their recovery meetings. What we could count were those chosen to go into that Veterans Village inpatient rehab program. Sunday morning, the vets came in one at a time, and most heard there was no room for them.
Ouch.
Marguerite Summers, who had no place to go, came in next.
You've followed through this weekend, and we think you'd be a great candidate. Okay. Congratulations.
I made it.
Why do you think you can do it now?
I know I have that hope restored in me, and I have the resources, and I just know that's what I need to do now, and I want it for myself. You know, I'm done living like this.
All right, we need everybody in this picture. Come on now, everybody in this picture.
Sunday afternoon.
Ready? Yeehaw!
Stand Down ended with what they called graduation.
Come on down. Left, right, Keynote!
They marched with military pride for one last shot of self-esteem. Bill Yarling raised the flag for Bravo Tent, Charles Worley for Delta.
So let's have everybody in the circle now.
They joined hands in a closing prayer. Then it was time to leave.
And when you see them leave, you think what?
It's hard. It's like, you know, Godspeed, you know? And there's so much that people need to do to be able to reach that escape velocity from being homeless. I hope that they get it. I hope that they have it.
Recently, the VA set a goal of ending homelessness among vets in 5 years. The government will spend $1 billion next year on housing and rehab. But the 23rd annual Stand Down turned out to be the largest ever.
This is just great.
Marguerite Summers was among 68 who drove to rehab, while 879 others, including Bill Yarling and Charles Worley, picked up their burdens to rejoin their battles. Fresh troops fell in with a column that spans generations.
You know, our liberties, our freedoms, our very way of life really can only be sustained by the way we treat those who are our guardians, our sailors, our soldiers, our airmen, our Marines. The way we treat them when they come back, particularly those that are hardest hit, determines whether or not we can sustain those liberties, those freedoms, and that way of life. When I saw this piece on 60 Minutes a while back, you know, and I've been following Dr. Nachison's work for some time, I thought, you know, we can do that. We can do that every day that the community colleges are open. We can have a stand down every day. You know, and with the work of all of you, the work of corporations like J.P. Morgan Chase, organizations like FAC, organizations, nonprofits that are out there working with the governmental agencies, we can solve this problem. We can solve this problem. And Dr. Nachison has been working on this for quite some time, and I want to thank you very much as a veteran for the work that you've done in this area. I just want to add a few things here, and I'm going to read all of this because this gives a very good background about Dr. Nachison. But Dr. Nachison he's past president and fellow of the San Diego Psychological Association and a faculty member of the University of San Diego. He is a licensed board and certified psychologist specializing in the treatment of psychological trauma and a U.S. Army veteran. He's been recognized as the Distinguished Humanitarian of the Year by the California Psychological Association, honored with a presidential citation by the Point of Light Foundation, and selected as the Clinician of the Year by the San Diego County Mental Health Community. In July 2011, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Dr. John Nachison, please.
So I want to start off by just telling you what an honor it is for me to be here today. This is so special. I don't know if you guys realize that you're at the beginning of something so important. It's amazing to see what's happening in California. And what happens in California is going to be copied everywhere. But this little summit that you're starting today is so important, so incredible. Just a quick background on the stand down, how it got started, I think is important because I think it's germane to what you're trying to do here. A friend of mine and I, a guy named Robert Van Kuren, we started doing some work in San Diego, working with veterans in the 80s. And just checking my watch here. And one of the things we noticed, we had some like employment programs and residential programs. And what we noticed is when we asked people where they lived, many of them said they were homeless. Now, you know, today when we talk about that, it's no big deal. I mean, we see 60 Minutes has a program on it. The VA has a big initiative. But the fact is in the 80s, nobody knew that there were so many homeless veterans on the street. And so we decided that we would start this stand down thing. But our plan was to do it for 1 year. It was so labor intensive that we figured if we could manage to get through 1 year, that would be enough. And then we would stop there. The data, the most recent data I've seen is that 1/3 of all the homeless people on the streets of America are veterans. 25% of all the homeless men on the streets of America are veterans. So we're not just talking about, you know, some folks that are disposable. We're talking about a huge segment of our veteran population. And like the guy said in the video, the current group, the OIF, OEF vets, are becoming homeless more quickly than the Vietnam era generation did. In 2007, I did a little summit here in San Diego. And the purpose was basically just what you're doing. It was an attempt to try and bring together different organizations, agencies, providers, lawyers, doctors, whatever, in San Diego, bring people together and say, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a tsunami of vets coming back to our community. What are we going to do about it? And as a result of that, San Diego has really come together like this in terms of its veteran community. We could do a lot better, but we have come together. We have a monthly meeting called VetFam, and the VetFam really is about, again, agencies and providers coming together to create a safety net. So here's what I want to tell you right from the get-go. Don't reinvent the wheel. We have a situation with the VA where if anything goes wrong with veterans, what happens? is we'll read an article in the newspaper about how the VA is not doing enough, how the VA is not taking care of what they need to take care of. Too many suicides, too much post-traumatic stress disorder. The VA can't do it all. And by the way, the VA is not who sent our young people to war. We all did it. We all did it. The whole community did it. The whole community is responsible for welcoming people back. And I feel like that's what the community college is really getting. I think you really got that message. But don't be the VA. The VA tries to take care of all of it. And what happens is they end up not being able to handle it. The VA is best when it partners with counselors out in the community, when it partners with the criminal justice system, when it partners with nonprofits, when everybody comes together and says, we're going to work together, not just to help vets, but to help their families as well. That's another piece for community college. What can you do for these families? Because that's part of the equation, an important part. You have to take into account what the families are doing. So here's what I want to tell you. When you go back to your communities, see what else is out there for veterans in your communities. What else is going on? And have a little mini summit in every community where you pull together the people, maybe that are working with homeless vets, the people that are working in the field treating PTSD, the people working treating TBI, the people working with the criminal justice system. Here in San Diego, one of the things that came out of our summit was a veterans court. The veterans court is huge because what it means is if a guy, for instance, could be a gal, but if a guy gets popped for domestic violence, instead of being shunted off into a system that doesn't know where he's been and has no sensitivity to what his issues might be, he now goes to a judge that knows about post-traumatic stress disorder. He has an attorney that understands what are the wild possibilities in terms of helping this person, and he even has a district attorney who's there to help, who's there to collaborate and cooperate. We have too many veterans sitting in jail because they came home and they got into drugs or they got into precarious action. I don't know if you know, but a lot of vets become addicted to their own adrenaline. And so they look for that rush that they felt, and they have to find it some way. Well, you can't find it just going out to the movies. You know, frankly, you got to do something that's a little more kick-ass. And I didn't mean to use the word kick there. I apologize. You got to watch me. But what happens is they will look for things where they can feel that sense of power, that sense of adrenaline, that norepinephrine that they felt when they were in the military, in a war zone. We eat our young. I see it in the Marine Corps, and I see it in the Army, where a guy comes back from being deployed, and he comes back to his unit, and maybe there's an NCO who's never been deployed. Maybe he's a little bit jealous or whatever, and suddenly this guy turns into, this combat veteran is being treated like he's a shitbird. And he ends up with bad paper. And then he has no VA benefits. And we got a lot of folks like that in our community. We need to understand what are the consequences of war and what is our responsibility. That's what I believe, that all of us have a responsibility. The community college system is ponied up. I know that one of the things that happens when we bring together providers and agencies is we have a lot of for-profit schools that come out of the woodwork. Maybe you've been acquainted with them. But they see that post 9/11 GI Bill money, and they are on it. and they want to get it. The problem is that there's no movement towards employment for that person. This happened at Stand Down this past year. We had like a feeding frenzy because this guy came and said, hey, I have an announcement. I've got jobs. Unfortunately, not 100,000, though that would be good. But this guy said, I have jobs, you know? And suddenly all these vets, particularly young vets at Stand Down, were kind of, you know, gathering around this guy. Well, I'll tell you what he had, a for-profit school that they could go to that maybe they have a shot of getting a job afterwards, but maybe they don't. And the most likely thing that's going to happen is they're going to burn out their GI Bill entitlement and be left with nothing. Career counseling needs to be part of your process wherever you are. It's not enough to educate people. We have to help them to be able to pick a path in life. One of the problems at this age group that we're talking about is that they're developmentally dealing with identity, developing identity. You know, the average age in Vietnam was 19 years old. I don't know what the average age is now. I think it might be a little older. But that's still young. And what happens is you're in the military, and I think you said it very well, Brian. You're in the military, and, you know, you're wearing the uniform, and you might feel like 10 feet tall. And then that's your identity. And you have your ribbons and your unit citations. And then you take the uniform off, now you're a civilian. And with that, you lose that identity. Some people run as far from it as they can. They try to drink it away. Other people try to hold on to a piece of it. But the issue of identity is a critical one at that age where people are going to the community college. That's where I think people need to have an opportunity to sort of look at, where am I going from here? We can have a lot of focus on looking at PTSD and looking at TBI and looking at all the issues. But the fact is, it isn't our problems that lead us. Our problems pull at us. It's our hope that pulls us. And developing a new identity, being able to say, okay, this is who I want to be in life. This is what I want to do. This is the contribution that I want to make to my community. And I want to use what I learned in the military. That's important. That's career counseling also. That should be, I think, an important part of what you do. Now, I learned from talking to my new friend Mike and others that you guys aren't governed by any organization that tells you what to do. You're all independent. That is so cool. And that's problematic. Because there's nobody that says, all right, from now on, all the campuses will have to have a DVOP, for instance. Or all the campuses will have to make sure there's a veterans counselor. So you need to band together in probably the most healthy way of all, which is grassroots. That's how Stand Down got started. You need to be grassroots. It begins here, I think, with you guys. You are the grassroots organization for the community colleges. You take your message back to your communities. Collaborate with other people that are going on, other agencies, other providers that are working in your community to make the community college the hub, but not self-sustaining and closed off. You don't need to be unilateral. There's too much good stuff out there. What I found in San Diego is we didn't have a lack of services. What we had was a lack of collaboration. Everybody wants to reinvent the wheel. If there's grant money on the table, what happens is every agency wants to be the one size fits all. Every agency wants to be able to do all of it. That never works. It's much better for agencies to partner. Say, this one is good in employment, this one is good in treating PTSD, this one is good in education. Let's collaborate, let's get together and really provide some kind of program that works. Now I want to say something about my friends the OIF, OEF folks. Because they're not like my era. They're not like the Vietnam vets. They're mobilized and motivated by different things. I know I encouraged guys in San Diego to form IAVSD, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of San Diego. And I thought it would be like VBSD. I thought it would be an organization that they'd be focused on issues, focused on employment and everything. But it wasn't. It became like a social media organization. They go for hikes, they do paintball, and things like that. That's okay. We have to understand that. The most important thing I think that I want to tell you is that the leadership has to come from the OIF, OEF vets. If you think we can lead them and we can tell them what they need to do, it's not going to work. They're not going to listen. Why should they? That's where the leadership should come from. I love the campuses that you have that have those veteran resource centers, because so many of them are led by peers. That's where it's at. That's what's going to make it. These guys, I mean, and gals, we talk about PTSD and TBI, but there's another side to it. There's a positive side. People who are in the military, they don't make promotion unless they pass the test. If they have to go to school for something, they have to pass. They have to get a passing grade, or they might get recycled, or they may have to go to that school again, or they may not lose that they may lose that opportunity. They learn how to study. They learn how to succeed. They need a little help in the beginning because of that transition we talk about. But these folks are the leaders of tomorrow. There's no question in my mind. And what you guys are doing and being here for this summit is being able to open your hearts and your doors to the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you very much.